In these presentations, I would like to explain my correlational research entitled The Correlations Between Student Intrinsic Motivation and Listening Comprehensions of EFL Students at Senior High School. So, here the research background. Listening comprehension is one of the most important skills in English as a foreign language learning. However, many senior high school students still face difficulties in understanding spoken English. These difficulties are not only caused by linguistic factors, but also by affective factors such as motivation. Motivation, especially intrinsic motivation, refers to students' internal desire to learn because of interest and enjoyment. Students who are intrinsically motivated tend to be more engaged and persistent in learning activities. Therefore, this study focuses on examining whether there is a relationship between students' intrinsic motivation and their listening comprehension. The next is research question and objective. Based on this background, the research question of this study is there a significant correlation between student intrinsic motivation and their listening comprehensions of EFL student at senior high school? The object the objective of this study is to investigate the correlation between student intrinsic motivation and their listening comprehension. And the research design this study is use a quantitative approach with correlational research design. The correlational research design is chosen because this study aims to examine the relationship between two variables without giving any treatment or intervention. The variables and scale of measurement. The variable in this study are variable X, student intrinsic motivation, and the variable Y is students' listening comprehensions. Both variables are measured using an interval scale, where intrinsic motivations is measured through a questionnaire scores and listening comprehension is measured through a listening test score. The hypothesis is the null hypothesis or HO. There is no significant correlations between students' intrinsic motivation and their listening comprehensions. And the alternative hypothesis is there is a significant correlation between student intrinsic motivation and their listening comprehension. The data and statistical analysis. The data used in this study are hypothetical data created for academic purposes, consisting of 30 students. To analyze the data, person product moment correlation is used because the study involves two interval scale variables and aims to examine the relationship between them. The level of significance set at 0.05. And the result is based on the SPSS output. The results show that the Pearson correlation coefficient is 0.997 with a significant value of 0.000, which is lower than 0.05. This means that the null hypothesis is rejected and the alternative hypothesis is accepted. In conclusion, there is a very strong and significant positive correlation between student intrinsic motivation and their listening comprehensions. This finding indicates that students who have higher intrinsic motivation tend to achieve better listening comprehensions. That is all for the explanation of my correlation research. Thank you very much for your attention. So today I would like to present my experimental research entitled An Experimental Study on the Effect of English Song on Student Listening Comprehension. So here is the research background. Listening comprehension is an essential skill in learning English. However, many students experience difficulties in understanding spoken English due to limited exposure to authentic language input. One teaching medium that can help overcome this problem is the use of English songs. Songs provide authentic listening materials and can increase students' motivation and engagement in learning. Therefore, this study was conducted to investigate whether the use of English song has a significant effect on students' listening comprehension. And the results question is there a significant effect of using English songs on student listening comprehension? Research design is the study employ an experimental research design, specifically a one-group pretest and post-test design. The same group of students was given a pretest followed by treatment using English song and a post-test. Research variable is independent variable X, use of English song, and the dependent variable or Y, students' English comprehensions. Population and sample. The population of this study was students learning English as a foreigner language. The sample consisted of 30 students selected using convenience sampling. The research hypothesis is the null hypothesis. There is no significant effect of using English songs on student listening comprehensions. And the alternative hypothesis, there is a significant effect using English songs on student listening comprehension. And then the data analysis technique. The data were analyzed using SPSS through the following steps. First, normality test. Before conducting the main analysis, a normality test was conducted using Shapiro-Wilk test since the sample size was less than 50. The results show that pretest significance value equal 0.326 and the post-test significant value equal 0.228 since both values were higher than 0.05 the data were normally distributed. And the second is statistical test. After the data met the normality assumption, a pair sample t-test was applied. This test was chosen because the same group of students was tested before and after the treatment. The result of the pair sample t-test showed that the significant value was 0.000, which is lower than 0.05. Therefore, the null hypothesis was rejected. And the conclusion is based on the data analysis, it can be concluded that the use of English song has a significant effect on students' listening comprehensions. This is shown by the result of the pair sample t-test, which indicated a significance value lower than 0.05. The increase in students' post-test scores compared to their pre-test scores suggests that the treatment was effective in improving students' listening comprehensions.